So today we're going to talk about how to get through client revisions, right? Sometimes projects can seem to have a lot of revisions and back and forth. So the question that was asked was, how do I limit the number of client revisions? And this was asked in our private free Facebook group called Designing Success. I'll drop the link below in case you're not a member and you want to hop over and join us. It's a really fun group. We'd love to have you. So I think that we can all relate to times where maybe we've struggled with the number of revisions that we've received on a project, and we've kind of wondered how to manage all of this and how to make the revisions actually efficient and how to actually get us to a finished, approved project, right? That's the goal. And we want our client to be thrilled with the work in the meantime. So I think we can all relate to this. I know I can. We start a project, we send a layout to the client, and maybe they like it, but they want to make changes, which is of course a normal part of the design process, right? We go through these cycles and iterations. But sometimes, maybe we realize we've gone back and forth like 4 times and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight or an approval in sight on this project. And so sometimes this project can drag out so long that it might even sit dormant for a while, or it might be forgotten by the client altogether, leaving us maybe feeling a little confused or frustrated or wondering how we're supposed to even invoice for this project since it's not technically finished yet, right? Who's been there? So if you've had this happen, give me a Y in the comments for yes, if this has happened to you. And if you're watching the replay, please comment too and ask any questions, and I will certainly go back and answer any questions that come up. So if you missed it live, don't worry, just comment on the replay when you get a chance. So in case we haven't met yet, I'm Amy Farrell. I'm a longtime graphic designer and design studio co-owner, and after about 20 years gathering experience in design and running my own business, I'm happy to pass on some lessons that I've learned to other graphic designers, creatives, and freelancers like you. So I want to help you enjoy the design process more, get some of your valuable time back so you can have a life, and of course, most importantly, create some lasting, profitable client relationships without losing your mind. So before we get too far into it, I think it's important to talk about a common theme that can come up around working with clients and revisions. I think there can be this kind of negative us against them mentality, meaning designers against clients. And I think this is sad, right? It's human nature to want to defend ourselves when we feel our work is being attacked, or many of us may feel the client doesn't know what they're talking about. Like, we know best because we're the designer. And maybe we're just resistant to making any changes because our ego sneaks in, right? We want to feel like we're doing great work and we don't want anybody to tear it down. And we've worked really hard on this. We've put our heart and soul into it. We don't want to feel like, we don't like that feeling if somebody comes in and offers some constructive criticism, right? But I want to encourage you to get rid of that mindset and perspective, okay? Clients are the reason we have work. They're the reason we have a business, and they've trusted us enough to work on a project with them. So we need to be grateful for that opportunity, and it's not always easy, but it's really important, and it'll help drive your entire process and help you to be more successful. I promise it will. So if we look at it from that way, from that place, a place of gratitude and opportunity, then our number one job really is to support our client in their project, not to fight them on what they request, okay? Not saying you can't question maybe what they ask you sometimes, but we'll get to that, but not to have this just visceral gut reaction to anything they ask us to change. Let's try not to have a negative response, okay? Because there's a better way. So let's look at each request from our clients objectively and professionally, and first ask ourselves whether or not that change will make the piece stronger. I mean, maybe it seems like a crazy idea to us at first, but let's actually consider it and ask, will this make the piece stronger? Will it help reach the goals of the project that were decided on in the beginning. Okay, so that's my first piece of advice, just changing our view on it a little bit so that we're not so resistant to making revisions. So really working through any project, a couple of the most important things to remember at every step of the process, not just through the revisions process, is that you need to have your expectations and goals defined for that project. And then you're also going to be doing a lot of reminding and following up to ensure that everything moves smoothly. That's just the way it's going to go. So I have a few tips for you that you can use to get your projects wrapped up sooner and with fewer revisions. So getting back to, managing all these revisions. So something I started to notice after working with many different clients is that for me anyway, there's essentially two common types of projects out there. One type, and this is mostly what we encounter, it's a very straightforward scope of work and a very clear endpoint. Like, we start this brochure here, we end here, we deliver it, and we're done, right? And then there's another type of project where it's not quite so defined and figured out yet. The scope might change, it might develop or grow or alter as the project progresses. And this may be because the client is working through a new business idea. They're not fully sure what this thing's going to be yet. So their exact design needs or full scope of the project isn't known yet. So sometimes it makes sense to have a project that's in development, right? Which can make the revisions process look very different. So we're going to focus on the first type of project I mentioned this time, and hopefully in a future video we'll discuss the little bit more wiggly type of project. So for this one, we're going to focus on a project where you have a clear scope and deliverables are defined at the start of the project. So they say prevention is worth, what's that saying? I don't remember it. Anyway, being preventative wherever you can is often a great idea. So we're going to start there. So let's say you have a new client and you want to start working with them on a project. So what I recommend you do first is set expectations with that client, just in general, for how you work. So if you're working with a new client, this ideally begins with communicating to them how your process works. Like, some clients don't know, or they've never worked with a designer. They may not realize that, okay, first you're going to provide a layout, and then they're going to provide feedback, and you're going to have a round of revisions, and that process is going to repeat. Don't assume they already know that. So what I like to do is actually have it typed out in a very brief set of steps. And this sets the stage ahead of time for the client, so they have some idea of how the project's going to progress and how many revisions they can expect. So you can spell this out in your estimate, for example, before they sign on. Say this project includes 2 rounds of revisions, and you can even add, if you want, additional rounds are billed at X dollars per hour. And when you send each round of the design to your client, you're going to note in the subject line of your email which round you're in, so it's immediately obvious. Okay, so you would say, layout for review, round 1, or layout for review, V2, which stands for version 2. If you're from an agency background, that's often what is used to denote different rounds of the project. So that takes care of the preventative part. We often put that information in our About Us document before we even start working with a client, just so they kind of have a heads up of how the process is going to go. And then once you get into the project, you can reiterate again how the process is going to go. So once you're working through a project, you can, like I mentioned, when you're ready to send a layout, state at the end of each email that there are X number of revisions left in our process. Be clear about the feedback and the next steps you need from your client. Don't just send in the layout and say, hey, let me know what you think. Be very specific about what you want them to comment on. Any questions you may have that maybe you're still kind of working through and you're not quite sure which direction they might want to go. Be very clear about what the next step is that you need them to do. And this usually helps them be very succinct with their feedback, so they're not firing off revisions to you without thoroughly considering if they're the right revisions for the project. I always encourage clients to spend some time with our layouts first, not to just, you know, immediately fire back with a whole bunch of changes, because, you know, I think I can relate anyway. Things are always better if I have a minute to actually process and think through before I respond. So if you've done all of this and you find that a client is still continually asking for excess revisions, and then I have to ask myself, okay, why are they needing a bunch of revisions? Is there something wrong in the design that I'm just not seeing? Is there something I'm doing that is not hitting the goals that we all agreed to at the beginning of the project? Like, you really have to kind of give yourself a gut check and go, okay, I thought I was doing everything right, but I'm gonna just verify that I'm actually delivering what I said I was gonna deliver. It could be that the expectations at the beginning weren't quite figured out, so you may want to go back and just check that everything you've said you were going to do is actually getting done. If any expectations were a little bit blurry or fuzzy, it might be a good time to go and redefine those with your client before you go through another round of revisions. Make sure that everybody's on the same page before just, you know, throwing layouts back and forth a whole bunch of times, because that just wastes everyone's time. So what I do every time I send a layout to a client, if I've kind of been through this revision process a few times and I'm feeling a little bit stuck, I go back through my notes and my project overview or my creative brief, whatever you use to organize your projects, and just make sure that I've captured every goal that I said I was going to deliver on for the project. And if there's anything that I'm not really solving for the client, then I might have, and you know, kind of the light bulb goes off and I say, oh, okay, that's where we're stuck. We need to focus on this piece and make sure that we're delivering on all the promises that we set forward. So in the end, it really comes down to defining expectations, knowing what your goals are, and making sure that you're checking yourself against those goals throughout the process of the project. And then don't be afraid to follow up, send reminders, and just really come at it from a place of, you know, I get to serve this client. I get to create an awesome project with them. How can I make this an awesome project for them? And come at it from a place of partnership and help, not getting defensive or immediately letting your ego sort of take over and say, well, I don't want to make that green, you know, it should be blue. You know, don't get into those little nuances. Just try to come at it from a place of help and service always. All right, I hope that helps you today. Let me know if you have any questions. I will go back and read through all the comments. So have a great day and a wonderful week. Bye.